vinyl community. I would like to tell three stories in the middle of this video today. It is a story of a trumpet player who decided to sing, and his name is not Chet Baker. It is the story of a duo who never released an album until 2014, even if they almost signed a contract with Apple Records in 1970. And the last story is the story of an old man who was called to make a track with the band Air, the Parisian electronic band. Let's go. The first album I want to show is this one, Parquet Courts. It is for me one of the best rock band of our period, and you have in that album a big poster. I won't show it because it is not easy to get it back in. The next record is this one, Father John Misty, singer-songwriter. I think it is really psychedelic. It seems to be a test pressing, but it is part of the design of the cover. Yeah, Father John Misty. It is the first album from him in my collection, and yes, I love it. The next one is Cotonette. Cotonette. It is a French, Parisian jazz band. This band is on stage since the early 2000s, but this is their first album, and because some of them did make side projects. For example, you have here Florent Pellissier. Florent Pellissier had made several albums beside this being part of this band. So Cotonette, it is a jazz band between jazz and jazz funk, and sometimes a little atmospheric, and yes, it is. It's very good. Yeah. And the next one is very well known now in the VC. It is a band from London, a jazz band as well. It is Ill Considered. It is Ill Considered 3. Yeah. Here is the first of my three stories. It is the story of a duo. This duo was Jim McGlynn and Alan Raikin. These two guys met in school in '66, and then they produced songs together, and in 1970 they were supposed to sign with Apple Records, but they went to London, and the Beatles. It was the period when the Beatles decided to stop the band, and it was 2 days after the interview of these two guys with the Apple Records manager. So the contract was cancelled, and after that they tried to sign another label in the mid 70s, and they didn't have enough money to make the production, and when the production of the tracks they wanted to produce were finished, this type of music was not trendy, so they couldn't release an album during the 70s, and this is the first release for the two guys, and it is released in 2014 by a small label called Vapor Mauve, and it is a gatefold, and Vapor Mauve could choose between 60 tracks, and they took the better tracks for this album. So it is a compilation, and the style of the music here, it is really close to Crosby, Stills and Nash. The two guys are singing together, and it is folk, psychedelic folk, and so this is a really good record, yeah, and it is in blue vinyl, and it was pressed in 500 copies. Really good album. Jim Muglin and Alan Raikin, Past, Present and Future. This is the first one, and they released another one, Alan Raikin here, and Jim Muglin here. It is on black vinyl, classic, and yeah, the name of the label here, Vapor Mauve. Vapor Mauve. This one is still available.
Things that are happening today. Well, sometimes you feel you're not to blame. Everything seems to stay the same. You might as well try to stop the rain.
The next album is a compilation as well, and it is a musician who used to create his own instrument. This instrument is that. It is called in French ondioline, and the album is this one. It is Jean-Jacques Perret et son iodioline. Well, this guy was a fabulous musician, and the ondioline was supposed to sound like several instruments you can imagine. So this album is clear vinyl. It is in clear vinyl, okay. One side you have music produced by Jean-Jacques Perret, and in the other side you have samples of different sounds you can do with that instrument. In the first side you have contribution between Jean-Jacques Perret and Badalamenti, the man who made the Twin Peaks soundtrack. And for the French who would look at that video, you have the original soundtrack of a famous film in France called La Vache et le Prisonnier. So this is I'm not sure I can tell you should have this, because it is not a real album, because one side it is a compilation of musics and the other side it is samples of sounds. But yes, and you have a booklet with explanation for all the music on the first side. So it is Jean-Jacques Perret and his Ondioline. And the story is Jean-Jacques Perret lived many years in New York. And then he came back to France, and he thought that because he was famous in USA, he would be famous in France. But no, everybody forgot his work in France. But in the 90s, he was an old man, and the electronic band from Paris called, from Versailles, called Air, asked him to make a track with them. You have collaboration between him and this French touch band, Air, Jean-Jacques Perret. The next one is the trumpet player who accepts to sing, and it is Don Cherry on this album called Homeboy Sister Out. So it is a double album. He recorded this album in France during the 80s, 83, and it is a very it's between jazz and world music, and with songs obviously, and funky. It is funky as well, and yes, in the discography of Don Cherry, it is a unique example, and it is not free jazz, it is more accessible. Don Cherry, Homeboy Sister Out. Another issue, Afro-Latin Soul, by the Ethiopian Quintet. The Ethiopian Quintet was the first band that was created by Mulatu Astake. You can see him here. And this is a reissue by Strut Records. So Afro-Latin Soul with African beat, Latin rhythm, and very soulful. The next one is a reissue as well, but it's very special because it is the last Prefab Sprout called I Throw the Megahertz, and very beautiful cover. And in fact, it is the last and the only album that Paddy McAloon produced alone, and so it is the reissue of this album. It is a double LP, and we can say it is less Prefab Sprout and more modern classical. But yes, it's really good when you like Prefab Sprout. It's different, but it is very good. Another Prefab Sprout, but this one is a classic. I had this one, I have it in CD, and this is the reissue on vinyl. So Steve McQueen by Prefab Sprout, and it is I think the early 80s. Great album. Another album that is not so famous, it is the second one from the Stone Roses, and you usually hear that this is not a good album, but you know what, not so good album by the Stone Roses is still better than most of the albums of this period, the early 90s. It is 1994, the release year for this album, The Stone Roses, Second Coming. Now I'd like to show 7 albums I get for 15 euros in total. I won't take time, just show them. This is a 12-inch single in 33rd RPM. The perfect. Soft rock, Canadian, Gino Vanelli, Brother to Brother. In the same vein, maybe best known, Rickie Lee Jones, her first album, T-Bone Burnett, Proof Through the Night. I have to listen to this one, but it seems it is 80, so it is maybe old-fashioned, but yeah, not so old-fashioned, I don't know. Charlie Lee Couture, it is a French singer-songwriter, very pop and very creative, so even if you don't understand French, you could like this guy, Charlie Lee Couture. Charlie Lee Couture released a new album last month, I think. I don't have it. And this one, yeah. Well, Jimmy Smith, The Cat Strikes Again. Yeah. With this type of cover, you know that this is not the golden age of jazz. No. Old-fashioned, no. So, well, funky, and the jazz part is maybe a little dull, but for €2, yeah. The last one, for this price of 15 euros in total. It is the Dave Brubeck Quartet featuring Jerry Mulligan, Alan Dunson and Jack Six, the last set at Newport. And you have Take 5 on the B side. And now, well, I've never shown this type of record because it's junk music. Maybe for non-French people, this is an album that you can say it is similar to James Last, this sort of guy. And the label is Le Tréteau International. But this album was in my want list for 6 months. And when I saw that in this record shop in the south of Brittany, he just said to me, take it for free, take it. So I took it. It was 2 days ago. And in this very bad album, you have a song called Don't Play For Me. It is a really famous example of modal jazz. It is a really good track. So I just tried to learn more about these guys. This one was a guy who played in the Paris, Caveau de la Huchette, very famous places where you could listen to jazz bands during the 50s. And well, and the rest of the album is just bad. But you have this track, and you have the last one here with the same composers, Daniel Janin and Jean-Claude Pierrick. And these two guys were part of the label, Le Tréteau International. And they only have released this sort of album, similar to James Last. And each time they just hide in the album some of their compositions, and today they are very famous because some of their compositions are magic, like this one, Don't Play For Me. So next week I will buy some junk music to try to find this hidden pearls you can find in this sort of albums that nobody wants. So yes, if you find this, Les Tréteaux International, you just look in the back, and if you see tracks signed by Janin and Pierrick, well, for €1, why not? And this one was free. Thank you for watching, and please make comment